I'm Kelly O'Horo, and I wanted to give a little bit of a warning. I'm sharing a very personal story today, and there's a pretty traumatic incident in it, and so I just want you a little bit prepared for that. I know that as a therapist, having been in trainings where we're not necessarily prepared, it's a little startling to hear something overwhelming, so I just wanted to give a heads up. And there's a little bit of a violent story, and so if that's uncomfortable, I wanted to give people an opportunity to exit. So like I said, I'm Kelly O'Horo. I'm the Arizona Trauma Recovery Network Medical Reserve Corps Unit Coordinator. I'm honored to be here today to discuss an important topic that has been identified by the Surgeon General as the largest gap in after-disaster preparedness in our country. As a society, we have no problem addressing physical emergent needs of people after terrible disasters, whether they're man-made or natural. However, a big oversight exists in after-disaster injuries that can't be seen or aren't as obvious. Once the dust is settled and people have some physical stability in their environment, whether it's medical care, shelter, resources like clean water and food, many times other less obvious issues surface, and we call these after-disaster injuries. And they include things like depression, worry, increased anger, remorse, regret, loss of sleep, some cases divorce, migraines, chronic pain, physical illness of all sorts. And if the stress from the events lasts for an extended period of time, problems just tend to compound. I'm here to talk to you about how we can address many of these adaptations before they get worse. We can assist the brain and body with processing the distress associated with the event and ultimately prevent it from getting stuck and turning into PTSD. But before I do that, I'd like to Talia shared with you that I have five sons, 4 of whom have served in the military, 2 are currently still active, and a husband who served for 13 years in the Navy as well. So I have a lot of firsthand experience with PTSD, not just because I'm a therapist, but in my home as well, and I've seen what it can do to several people that I love. My oldest son, Christian, joined the military, and he was a happy-go-lucky, very energetic, love of people, love of helping kind of guy. And he became an airborne combat medic, and he was attached to a scout battalion in the 82nd Airborne. He and 29 other guys spent 10 months in Afghanistan, ahead of the regular army, securing areas before the main troops came in. And he spent time humping gear, sleeping in ditches, 4 months without a shower. He helped countless soldiers with massive injuries, loss of limbs, life-changing disabilities, and even death. His sense of helplessness, of not being able to do more and change some outcomes that occurred, really took its toll on my son. Towards the end of his time there, one of his guys was at the front of the group. He led them across the bridge because they'd all just went through their last pair of dry socks. And at the end of the bridge, he stepped on an IED. My son, who was the medic, was ordered to stand down and stay on the bridge until sunup so they could secure the area. And his sergeant said the only thing that was worse than losing Smith would be to lose him too. So my son sat on the bridge in agony, not able to go help his buddy for 6 hours. Trauma, in short, is a threat we weren't prepared to handle, and there are 2 kinds of helplessness. Helplessness to help oneself and helplessness to help somebody else. My son felt helpless to attend to his soldier, and I'm sure you can imagine the effects that it had on him. The stress and overwhelm associated with his time in Afghanistan built up in his body and to a place where he had no more capacity to handle stressors. We all have a point where we just can't take any more stress on, and it's just a capacity issue. We run out of space and something's got to give. So I want you to imagine that this is your brain, and it's constantly scanning our environment for what we see, smell, taste, hear, and experience. And our amygdala, which is our body's alarm system, is there to tell us where there's threat. And it tells our brainstem whether we need to fight, freeze, or flee. And at that point, if it perceives danger, our prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for all of our thinking, reasonable, rational logic, and problem-solving abilities, goes offline or gets out of the way so that our body is better prepared to handle the stress. And basically, this means we kind of flip our lid so we can't think. And the danger messages are stored differently in the brain, which helps to make them more readily available for the next time a threat happens. We learn to identify threat and adapt based on our perception of danger, whether it's emotional or physical. And since we're constantly scanning for danger, we can count on our amygdala to keep us safe. This process is 1 million times faster than our thinking part of our brain. I'll illustrate how threat we weren't prepared to handle gets stuck or trapped in our system, which ultimately causes memory to be unresolved or stay live. This is PTSD. When we experience something that's overwhelming to our system, it's like eating a huge steak without chewing it. The information can't be digested to keep our body better prepared for the next time something happens. It's all about assessment of threat. And when our brain hasn't been able to digest something or process something that was distressing, it causes a lot of stress on the body and physical illnesses, which is caused from swelling that's in the brain and from the brain having to be in distress mode for too long. It's supposed to be more temporary, but it's a chemical response from our adrenal system, and a stress hormone, cortisol, causes it. So remember, the brain is responsible for all of our organs in our body and affects all of our systems. So the swelling in our brain affects every body system. And of course, the stress on the whole body can cause physical illness. And as our brain processes memories, if there's something overwhelming that gets stuck, then anything we see, taste, hear, smell in the future reminds our body to respond to the overwhelming dangerous thing, and it triggers that protection mechanism in our body, so we either fight, freeze, or flee. The unhelpful part of this system is that our body will keep responding even if the danger is over. These adaptations were learned from dangerous things, and they're now obsolete, no longer needed, but we still react like it's the same. So in Israel, a protocol was developed that can address our body's response to threat and help it digest information more quickly, so it doesn't get stuck and turn into PTSD. It's well-researched and very effective. And because they have so many threatening issues, they have specialists on all their ambulances and in their hospitals to prevent PTSD from becoming, or from acute distress reactions from becoming PTSD. It accelerates the learning that the brain takes in for information and helps take old information from fear to fact. So recent traumatic episode protocol, which is a specific EMDR therapy that therapists use, it helps the brain to digest information so it doesn't get stuck. It basically like cuts up the undigested steak into small pieces so the brain can process it into a memory. And it allows the body to be relaxed and ready, and rather than unnecessarily on alert. When my son came home from Afghanistan, he didn't report his symptoms to the social worker. And that pull up your bootstraps mentality isn't great if you don't take off the wet socks before you don't address it. And it doesn't serve us well. He'd call me crying often how he couldn't handle the stress, he couldn't sleep, he couldn't hear loud movies, leaves crunching under his feet, and he was easily startled with sleep, so his sleep of course suffered. He had nightmares, flashback, and a tremendous amount of guilt. His symptoms were really pervasive. He came home from leave and saw a colleague of mine for 5 sessions, only 5 sessions. He was able to work through many points of disturbance that he experienced as a result of the traumatic event, and he had significantly less distress and was able to finish out his enlistment. Our Medical Reserve Corps unit is an all-volunteer specialized group of trauma therapists trained in EMDR therapy and RTEP, and we offer pro bono treatment after disasters, whether man-made or natural, in Arizona. And I'm proud to report that since last year, after the Yarnell fires where we lost 19 hotshots in one day, we've provided thousands of hours of treatment, direct training, educational outreach, and throughout the communities of Arizona about preventing acute distress reaction from turning into PTSD.